Today we are going to talk about the OceanGate situation. About a week ago, a submersible went missing in Canada's oceans while it was diving down to the ocean floor to visit the Titanic wreckage site. The military was called and rescue efforts were underway. OceanGate was a new fledgling company which offered tours to the deep ocean for $250,000 per passenger. On day 1, passengers boarded the Polar Prince, the support ship carrying the Titan, a submersible that would take all 5 of them down to the ocean floor. By day 2, the ship arrived at the dive site to begin preparations. On day 3, it's time. On June 19th, 7 a.m. ET, the 4,000-meter dive to the Titanic remains at the ocean floor begins. It should take 2 hours to reach the Titanic wreckage site. The submarine was supposed to send out a ping every 15 minutes or so during the dive. However, after 1 hour and 45 minutes, communication with the Titan submersible was lost. The Polar Prince staff on the support ship called the authorities at once. Titan's parent company, OceanGate, was informed, and so were the Coast Guard and relevant authorities. So began a mad scramble to find the missing sub and its 5 passengers: the British adventurer Hamish Harding, the father-son duo from Pakistan, Stockton Rush, the CEO of the submersible the passengers were in, and an ex-French Navy commander and Titanic enthusiast Paul Henry Nargeolet. These were the 5 people who went missing. Unfortunately, the remains of the Titanic submersible have been found. There was a catastrophic implosion. The missing 5 have gone to a better place. The search has ended and their families are grieving. So how could this happen? How could a well-engineered craft be lost at sea when OceanGate's own CEO is on it? How could an ocean craft simply break apart underwater? What happened? To understand what happened, you need to know the difference between submarines and submersibles. It is also important to understand the Titan, the sub that holds the 5 missing passengers who have now passed away, is not a submarine. It is a submersible. Unlike submarines, submersibles cannot move well in water. They don't have strong enough propellers that can propel themselves efficiently on water. They cannot leave or come back to port on their own. What it can do is dive down and move up, and move slightly using its controls, and that's it. You could say submersibles like the Titan were inferior versions of submarines. Titan needed its own support ship, the Polar Prince, to bring it to the dive location. Unlike submarines that can stay underwater for months, submersibles like OceanGate's Titan only had 96 hours worth of oxygen for 5 people. If a submersible fails to resurface within the time allocated to it, that means the worst has happened. There's a danger its oxygen supply might run out. GPS and radar don't work in deep waters. Titan can't actually see underwater. They need instructions from a team above water to send them directions using SMS delivered to the sub using Elon Musk's Starlink satellite. Now, before we blame Elon for the botched SMS service, know that there are other reasons for the sub's disappearance. Besides, Starlink can't provide Wi-Fi to deep oceans anyway. It's more likely that OceanGate was using Starlink to beam Wi-Fi to the Polar Prince, the support ship that was floating on top of the sea. Elon Musk himself saw a tweet of OceanGate saying they used Starlink to provide internet to the Titan submersible and said it was a psyop, meaning propaganda designed to mislead people from the truth. It was not Elon Musk's fault that the submersible lost communication with the ship. When Titan lost communication with its team on the Polar Prince support ship, the regular contact that was the only way to navigate the Titan was lost. It was a red alert. The authorities were called in immediately. Now you know why Titan's disappearance was so scary. Let's talk about the red flags leading up to the OceanGate expedition. First, I want you to all know how the Titan submersible was controlled. OceanGate employees were using a video game controller to control the submersible.
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on!
The Logitech F710 is a $30 controller. The passengers of Titan paid $250,000 to sit in a sub controlled by a $30 game controller. However, it is industry standard to use a game controller to control submarines. For example, the US Navy began using Xbox 360 controllers for their submarines because the controllers made by their old defense contractors were clunky and hard to use.
They did a number of different studies with a newer generation of sailors that were coming in and said, hey, how can we make this more intuitive? How can we make it easier for them to get proficient faster, right? And they figured out the use of an Xbox controller, right? I mean, again, this is an Xbox controller that, again, it shows you how you operate what you're doing with each pieces and part, whether that's changing the cameras from black and white to color, or we have infrared capability. We have a number of different filters, again, to where we can use the periscope to accomplish a mission, and then most importantly, be able to keep the ship safe when we're periscope depth. You'd be surprised at the number of times sailors will come in, new junior officers, having never operated the periscope, and just the intuitive nature of how this operates, whether you're zooming in, changing color or cameras or whatever the case is, it's very intuitive, much more so than the previous joystick. And the other benefit is the previous joystick was not cheap through the supply system. It was probably about $5,000. And these are like $60, right?
OceanGate couldn't even afford to use the mainline controllers. The Logitech F710 controller, while it's good enough for gaming, is a third-party controller. I brought this up to show the kind of cost-cutting that is seen throughout the entire Titan submersible. Inside the Titan, the lights on the sub were bought from a camping store. The toilet was a literal bottle. The size of the submersible was so tiny and cramped, all 5 of its crew members were forced to sit on the floor, huddled together. Marker instructions were duct taped to equipment. Construction pipes were allegedly used as ballasts needed to make the submersible move up and dive down. They went through $1 million of gas just to move the thing. No wonder they charged $250,000 per passenger.
Are you making money on this operation?
No. So, not yet. People might say, hey, that's a lot of money, $250,000. But we went through over $1 million of gas.
Everything inside the Titan submersible seemed MacGyvered. The amount of control passengers had over the sub was abysmal. They only had one button to tell the sub to go up or down.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. We only have one button, that's it. It should be like an elevator. It shouldn't take a lot of skill.
And a Jackie game controller to move around. Logitech is still a good brand, just saying. The sub didn't even have sonar beacons it could use to send emergency pulses to the surface in the event that an accident occurred. Even the submersible's window wasn't safe. The manufacturer said the window wouldn't break at an ocean depth of 1,300 meters, but Titan was traveling to a depth of 4,000 meters to see the Titanic remains. That's 4 times more in meters and more ocean pressure than what the window could withstand. The window could have broken apart for all we know. Sure, as long as the core parts are unharmed, the sub can still operate, but you wouldn't want to be cheap when you're traveling into dangerous territory like the deep oceans. Titan's engineering team even skimped out on a lot of safety features. Early signs of Titan's catastrophe can be traced back to 2015, a whole 8 years from the disappearance and implosion of the Titan. David Lockridge, an engineer, submarine pilot, and an employee of OceanGate at the time, raised several quality control issues for the Titan sub. Lockridge was fired for raising his concerns and sued for leaking confidential company information. In the counterclaim lawsuit in 2018, Lockridge alleges he raised concerns about the design of Titan's hull. The hull, in overly simple terms, is the wall of the submarine. The issue was the design of the submersible's hull was made of carbon fiber instead of a metallic composition like steel. Lockridge wanted to conduct non-destructive testing and unmanned pressure testing on the Titan. He was not allowed to scan the hull of the Titan for delaminations, porosity, and voids of sufficient adhesion for the glue used because of the hull's thickness, especially when no form of equipment existed that could perform the test well. The testing was important since no submersible composed of carbon fiber had reached a depth of 4,000 meters before, but the CEO of OceanGate refused. Without testing the integrity of the vessel, Titan was at best an experimental, unproven vessel at the time. In fact, the Titan sub was only built to withstand a pressure of 1,300 meters underwater instead of the 4,000 meters it claimed it could handle. The lawsuit was settled out of court, so the concerns were probably never addressed. OceanGate's website claims Titan's hull design had literal help from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, as well as an aircraft company called Boeing and the University of Washington. However, after the disappearance of the Titan, the truth came out. Boeing said it was not a partner of the Titan and did not design or build it. The University of Washington said it initially signed a $5 million research collaboration agreement with OceanGate to build a steel-hulled vessel called the Cyclops 1 that could only travel on shallow shallow waters up to 500 meters in depth, but only $650,000 of work was completed before the two organizations parted ways. The university had nothing to do with the design of the Titan. NASA said it only consulted for the OceanGate project through online meetings, but never conducted testing or approved projects for the OceanGate expedition of any kind. Perhaps that was why passengers-to-be of Titan's deep-sea expedition were forced to sign waivers to accept the possibility of injury or death in OceanGate's experimental sub.
Experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign?
Many other employees within the company and people outside of it also warned OceanGate about the vessel's safety. Some passengers who had paid a $10,000 deposit chickened out at the last minute after they saw how unsafe the vessel was. Digital marketing tycoon Chris Brown, a friend of Hamish Harding, one of the 5 who died in the sub, was supposed to join his friend Hamish Harding on the sub but decided not to after he saw the Titan. He felt OceanGate had cut too many corners. The New York Times reported that almost 40 people, including industry leaders, penned a letter warning Stockton Rush that the experimental approach OceanGate was using might result in catastrophic outcomes for those involved.
There are only 10 vehicles in the whole world that can go 4,000 meters or deeper, and all of them are certified except the Titan. So it is an outlier. Experts in the industry at the conference voiced concern, what are we going to do? This is very risky. If it's experimental, you should not be taking people down. As chairman of the Submersible Committee, I stand by the letter and all the sentiments of our members that were worried. There's no joy in saying, boy, we were hoping this wasn't going to happen. We are in a very precarious situation right now, and it's affecting a lot of people.
The now deceased Stockton Rush was the CEO of OceanGate, who told everyone he didn't want to hire 50-year-old white guys on his team, even if they were seasoned submariners, saying he preferred hiring younger people to inspire them. The CEO of the OceanGate company was a loose cannon as well, but no one could argue that he was truly passionate.
I'd like to be remembered as an innovator. I think it was General MacArthur said, you're remembered for the rules you break. And, I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did. It's picking the rules that you break that are the ones that will add value to others and add value to society. And that really, to me, is about innovation. It's not invention.
After reading the letter, Stockton Rush said industry standards were stifling innovation. On his blog in 2019, Stockton explained why the Titan sub was not classed, which involved not wanting to be evaluated on industry safety standards. And according to Bloomberg, Stockton Rush said that safety was pure waste. He told the CBS reporter David Pogg, if you want to be safe, don't get out of bed, don't get in your car, and don't do anything. What's more, Titan's dive into the ocean took place during a harsh winter. One of the passengers' Instagram admitted this. Hamish Harding's Instagram said, due to the worst winter in Newfoundland, Canada in 40 years, this mission is likely to be the first and only manned mission to the Titanic wreckage in 2023. In fact, Stefan B. Williams, a professor at the Australian Centre for Robotics at the University of Sydney, gave his take on the worst-case scenario for the missing sub. Stefan said, if Titan's hull has any defect in shape or build that compromised its integrity, there was a risk of implosion, which was exactly what happened. And we all know that could very well be the case, since OceanGate's own CEO, the same one that was stuck in the missing sub, fired the one engineer that voiced his concerns about the sub's safety. Initially, there was some hope of finding the sub. Apparently, banging sounds were detected at 30-minute intervals by a Canadian plane using sonar. The problem here is, banging on the carbon fiber hull made less sound compared to banging against a traditional steel hull, muffling the sound and making it harder to locate. Ships, ROVs, sonar equipment, planes, salvage teams, and other rescue teams have been dispatched to look for the missing sub.
Coast Guard has coordinated search efforts with the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard, Air National Guard aircraft, and the Polar Prince, which has searched a combined 7,600 square miles, an area larger than the state of Connecticut. To date, those search efforts have not yielded any results.
Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to find him alive. that's a sad reality on that.
Titan previously had 40 hours out of the 96 hours of oxygen remaining, and then eventually it ran out of time. OceanGate's co-founder had come out and tried to reassure the public that the oxygen supply could probably last longer than previously thought to calm nerves. The best case scenario at the time was Titan could be floating on the ocean instead of the ocean floor. We can only be thankful that the implosion was swift and they didn't have to suffer. Unfortunately, the time to be positive and believe in the many people working to locate and rescue the 5 passengers have come and gone. Bits and pieces of the Titan submersible implosion have been found, and the 5 people who were in it are lost to the world. Their bodies were never found.
Essentially, we found 5 different major pieces of debris that told us that it was the remains of the Titan. The initial thing we found was the nose cone, which was outside of the pressure hull. We then found a large debris field. Within that large debris field, we found the front end bell of the pressure hull.